Okay. Hello. So welcome. This is don't really have a name for this yet. I'm thinking of calling it the Improving Squad Podcast or whatever. Hey. So I'd like to introduce Kade McKiggan, both a current and former intern at Improving Enterprises. Kade is a very good man who's recently caught the self-improvement bug. Kade is just beginning his career, and although his accolades aren't stacking up in a trophy case behind him yet, he still has a tremendous amount of value to add. He's extremely persistent and by far one of the best listeners I've ever met for someone his age. I'm truly proud to have him on the Squad Podcast. And that said, Kate, welcome. Uh,
How's it
so,
going? It's good to be here.
yeah. So, what's been going on? What have you done today? What's going on with you?
So I'm glad you asked. Today has been pretty good in that you actually introduced this idea to me with Tim Ferriss, is the idea of winning the morning. You sent me that article by him, and I've been super focused on that because if you get your day started right, it just completely impacts the rest of your day. You feel so much better. You feel great starting, and it like you that hit of dopamine just encourages you to do more for the rest of the day. So waking up early at like 7 a.m. I'm gonna try and get that earlier. Literally on our Dallas Scrum meetings now, we have like a competition where it's like who can wake up the earliest now. I thought I was doing good. I'm coming for Lori next.
Yeah.
But waking up super early, stretching too. You mentioned you're pretty big into yoga these days. And I haven't done any like specific yoga, but I absolutely like the general idea is just wellness, like stretching, flexibility, I guess mindfulness. But stretching is like super underrated these days. Like I can't like it's kind of like a stereotypes that guys cannot be flexible like whatsoever. Like, it's and everything. And like I'm pretty big into lifting weights too. But stretching is like a huge part of that. Like otherwise you just end up like a massive individual that can't do anything. It's self-defeating and that you lose your athleticism. You're really strong, but you can't reach a full squat. You can't
Yeah.
like put your arm behind your back. Like that is like it's terrible, honestly. So
Well,
stretching is a
there
big
is
part
some
of mine.
credit. Absolutely. Well, I mean, there is some credit to like not being able to fit through a doorway, right? So you got to like, excuse me, So there is some good credit there. Yeah, it is actually really interesting how it's like acceptable for guys to be like incredibly weak in certain areas, where like flexibility is one of those where it's like stereotypically like funny or something to like for a guy not to be able to touch his toes or to not be able to do a full squat or all these types of things. I don't know. Where do you think that comes from? Like, because
I
there's this idea.
honestly
So, yeah,
I have a theory, yeah. I think it's because there tends to be an inverse relationship between strength and muscle and flexibility. Because I get it is definitely harder, I'd say, to be flexible when you're bigger. And there's just more, especially because when you like lift weights, your muscles get stronger, but your tendons don't. And that's kind of like where the stretching and tendon building exercises come from. And that's more like in yoga's domain. But I think that's what it is that like when you're lifting weights and everything, you're getting huge and you're not doing yoga, you're not building your tendons. I don't know. That's literally my best guess is that there's the inverse relationship where it is harder to be flexible when you're bigger. So maybe it's like a sign of, oh, it's okay, I'm strong. That's like it's typically what's valued in men. That's my theory. I don't know.
yeah, it is it's kind of nuanced, like because there's different ways to be healthy, right? There's like, so if you imagine like a tree, so it's like a healthy person has different kind of like branches on it. One of those branches would be like general, maybe like cardiovascular fitness or like heart health, these types of things. And then maybe another area is like general mobility. I think it was Tim Ferriss or maybe one of his guests. They defined mobility as demonstrating strength throughout the entire range of motion. And this is really what yoga is all about. Like yoga is all about mobility, so training mobility, training breath work, and kind of training like relaxation. So a big theme. So I used to be a heavy weightlifter. I got really yoked. I would hang out with people like that, and so it was just like like this, you know. And I would literally walk through doorways sideways. It was just a big ego trip. Um, and after joining yoga, I realized that like yoga is just a totally different kind of vibe and mentality. Where it's like when I'm at the gym, you can see it in my face how hard I'm trying. Like when I as I'm lifting the weights up, you know. But in yoga, this is like taboo, where it's like if your face is straining, then you're trying too hard. You need to take it easy. If your breath work isn't like consistently like flowing, then you're trying too hard. You need to take it easy. So yoga is like this really interesting practice where you try as hard as you can, but the limit is like be cool, be calm with it. And so it's this very natural and gradual kind of increase in mobility where at the beginning there's a very long period of time where you're not really showing any growth. And then as your balance starts to improve and as your breath work starts to improve and your legs, they don't get stronger, they just get more resilient, or like it's like your body just starts to change. And then you can start doing these poses where or like for me there's this one pose called lizard, where imagine your left leg is going straight behind you and your right leg is at like it's on your heel. Like so imagine you're sitting on the ground with you're sitting on your butt, your feet are both in front of you. So you take your left leg, swing it around so your leg is kind of straight behind you. So this would be like a split. But then take your right leg and put it up kind of at an angle so that your heel's on the ground and your knees in the air. And then take your left like forearm and put that down to the ground. So you're kind of bending forward with your left leg back, with your right leg kind of at an angle on your heel with your knee pointing up. And this is lizard pose. And this stretch is so difficult to do because my hips are incredibly inflexible. And just it's like all of my hips, I think maybe it's from skateboarding where my hips are so weak. But this is one of those poses where it takes like months to kind of work into it. But as you work into it, then you realize like you can actually breathe during it, and now you're getting a little bit more flexible. Um, but yeah, kind of going back to this guy flexibility thing, yoga is full of chicks. There's like nothing but chicks in the class, you know? And it's like, and maybe it's because I'm in Austin where it's kind of more of that vibe where it's like okay to be like a yogi, where these classes are a little bit more full with men and women, a little bit more balanced. But somewhere like College Station, I would be very, very surprised if there was more than a handful of guys in a yoga class, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so maybe it's just like the division, like it could be it's more attractive for a female to be uh, flexible, where it's more attractive for a male to be, or not a male, like a man. It's more attractive for a man to be kind of like yoked, like whereas man and woman being like a cultural term for what we think like a man is or whatever, it's like kind of made up and it changes throughout time. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so
That's
yoga is very interesting.
I
Do
guess
you think
I
it's harder to be flexible? Sorry, go on.
no, actually go ahead because I'm interested in that question. Go ahead.
So, well, you think it's harder to be flexible if you're bigger, or is it just you haven't been investing, so you have more to come, you have more
See,
to
that's
go,
that's a
right?
good question because when I was getting my explanation before, I thought of that exact same thing, is that maybe that's just a stereotype, because it absolutely is. It just takes practice, and yoga, by you're strengthening your tendons and like ligaments by definition when you're stretching. So it's necessary, and it made me think, like, I always thought like, oh yeah, obviously it's harder for if you're bigger, but I actually have no idea, like zero scientific evidence to back that up. Like that absolutely could just be a huge stereotype. It very well could be just that I've been conditioned to think that by kind of the gym culture. Like every big guy will tell you, "Oh, yeah, I'm massive. I can't do that kind of stuff." And it's like, how do you know? You probably, like, a lot of them haven't even tried. Like they fail early and give up because they just don't realize that it takes time. It's a skill that you need to develop like everything else.
Yeah, like a lot of people think that learning a skill is like this, where there's a constant kind of
Mhm.
increase in your skill level.
Mhm.
But with yoga and probably many things, it's like this.
Like
So there's like this,
exponential.
yeah, there's a huge, it's like sometimes it's crazy long where it's like there's almost no improvement. You go for weeks and weeks and you're just not getting any better. And then maybe there's something like these, each time you go, maybe you get like a point or something. And then over time, your points accumulate and they start to compound, something like that. But yeah, this gym culture is so weird. Like, really, it really
Yeah,
is weird.
it's
I used to
crazy.
go to, so what gym do you go to?
So when I'm in College Station, I just go to the school rec, which like they have great facilities, but it gets like insanely crowded, unfortunately. Like it's not as bad during the summer, but it's like anarchy. It is a jungle in there during the semester. And then back home, I go to Texas Family Fitness. They have a few locations in like North Dallas, just kind of a local gym.
Okay. So what's it like at the rec? What are the type of people that go in there?
Definitely like gym culture, like the traditional gym culture is in full swing, like at the rec. Like I don't really fit a lot of the stereotypes of gym culture in that I've been lifting weights like for a long time now, like approaching 4 years now. And most people consider me to be like pretty toned, like because it's a passion of mine. Like it's probably my favorite hobby now, and so I've seen like a lot of development over the years. But I have never taken a gym selfie once. I've never taken a gym selfie once. I've never, I don't think I've ever taken a mirror selfie once. Like every time I
What?
go into the bathroom at the gym, there's guys just like shirt off, like flexing. It's like, I just like, I don't know. Like people, yeah, I just don't really identify with a lot of gym culture because it's just so like I guess vain. That's not necessarily fair because I understand like when you put a lot of effort into something, you like want to show it off. That's the mindset. But a lot of it is also just kind of unhealthy and that like the obsession with pre-workout and just like these insane
Hmm.
stimulants that are becoming commonplace like for teenagers nowadays. Like the kids these days are massive. Like when I'm gonna sound like I'm like I'm only 21, but when I was in high school, like there were not a lot of big kids. Like everyone's like pretty skinny because no one's really lifting weights. The kids that I see like coming into college now are just massive. Like gym culture is huge these days, especially like in high school. Like with that comes like the 400 milligrams of caffeine pre-workouts. Creatine is really big these days, which it like aids in muscle development, but it can damage your kidneys if you're not careful. You have to cycle it. I know a lot of high schoolers getting on SARMs or just types of kind of steroids that just aren't quite as heavy, but it's a big deal these
Interesting.
days.
That's wild. Yeah. First of all, I literally cannot believe you've never taken a mirror selfie. Um,
I'm psycho.
that's so funny. So growing up, this is what me. It was like I was like the first person in my whole high school to like get yoked. There was a few of us. There was me. Robin was yoked, and there might have been two or three other people, and that was pretty much it. And I had maybe it was because I was always very skinny, and so like any improvement was like dramatically different from where I started, and so it was very motivating to see any improvement at all. And so after I got the bug, then a few of my real good buddies they got the bugs too, and we totally embraced mirror culture. Like we would go to the gym, and no way you're gonna miss peak peak bulk flex mirror. Are you kidding? It's not about taking pictures. In fact, we rarely ever took pictures, but it was just about seeing the progress, you know. And even in yoga class, so I sweat more than is probably healthy. I sweat so much you wouldn't even believe. And so to that end, it's kind of sometimes it's ineffective to wear shirts or whatever. So I go to yoga, I take my shirt off, and I like to be in the front row. And because I like to see myself, because seeing myself is extremely motivating to me, right? And I get that it can be vain and egotistical or whatever. I'm just being honest, right? And even these girls like commented on it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we got such a good spot." I was like, "Actually, I was eyeing that spot right over there." They're like, "You like to be in the front?" I was like, "No, I like to be able to see me, right? Because it's extremely motivating knowing that I showed up today, knowing that I showed up all last week, and that I've been doing this, and I can see the results, and it just works." So I'm a big fan of mirror culture, and not necessarily taking pictures or whatever. But I just thought it was funny that you've never like flexed in the mirror. We got to
Okay,
change
well,
that.
no,
This
see,
has definitely got to change.
hearing you describe that, like, yeah, like I use the mirrors a lot and everything, and it's like, yeah, I'll be like, oh wow, I'm looking pretty good today, but I guess it's just yeah, it's the pictures. Like, I'm just not really into the pictures because I don't know. I literally, for me, I really pride myself on my ability to like just trust the process. Like, that's how I, got to where I am today, is by just trusting the process. Like, I like over the course of like a couple of years, like I lost 40 pounds, and then like because I wanted to get skinny first. Like I was like borderline obese when I was a
Whoa.
freshman in high school. I lost 40 pounds over the summer, and I really just wanted to like be thin. I didn't really care about gaining weight, and it wasn't until my senior year of high school that I started lifting weights. And like looking back, like yeah, from senior in college to freshman in high school, it's a pretty big gap, but like insane change. Like I'm 20 pounds lighter than I was as a freshman, despite being way stronger. Like it's just like all muscle now. Like I don't know how we got on
That's
this tangent.
badass. Dude, what? Okay, wait. First of all, what did people say when you came back sophomore year, like first day of school? Because there's people you're hanging out with over the summer, and maybe
Yeah.
they, unfortunately, they don't get to see the change because they're with you every day or whatever. So they don't see the sudden change. But you must have shown up and been like a night and day scenario. 40 pounds is a lot. I mean, 40 pounds is noticeable everywhere in your face, in your neck, in your arms, obviously your belly. Like it must have been night and day. Like what was that like?
Yeah, I'm sure some of it was also definitely just, maturing a bit, like getting a little bit taller, losing some baby fat, but I specifically remember um being in a class. This might have been in a locker room, like it was after like gym class or something, and I had him in a class as a freshman, like last year. This is sophomore year and last year, freshman year, when I was 40 pounds heavier, and he was literally like he didn't recognize me. Like I like said hi to him. I was like, "Hey, how's it going, man?" He's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "No, it's me." He was like blown away. Like he like literally did not recognize me, and that was like I still remember that now. Like that is one of the biggest. That's probably one of the best, like most prideful I've ever felt in my life. It was just seeing the way others react to me. But it's interesting because back then it was a really big deal for me. Like, well, I guess when you're in high school and insecure. But these days, like, and this is probably why related to like the pictures is I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, oh man, like I look good today. But it's like, I don't really care if others like see that. I don't know. It just like that idea of like, kind of just flexing like yourself at the gym, like is just not really my scene.
Well, it's actually quite interesting because there's actually an opposite. One of the guys, I think it's Yuval Noah Harari or whatever in Tribe, he mentions it's important to be honest with yourself and to follow through with the commitments that you make with yourself because it's not that other people will know that you're like flaky or whatever. It's because you will know. Like you will always remember that like you're not trustworthy or whatever. And so every time you kind of break one of these commitments with yourself, you kind of fall off a little bit, and but then the opposite is that. So the opposite of this is when you show up every single day and you're like low key building these skills or like building the strength or losing your weight. When you see yourself, it's like like you will always know how far you've come, and this is so incredibly motivating, and I just think that's cool. Um, so yeah, you'll always know, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it feels so good to work out, or like maybe that's why it's so difficult to start working out is because you don't have any of that fuel to come with you. You don't have any of the motivation that comes with action.
100%. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's easy now because I've come such a long way. It's a passion of mine now. I've just developed like a love for it over time, but especially now, it's like, yeah, I know where I've come from, like my background. And additionally, you just get used to the movements, and it's like I'm really confident in myself now, but when you're just starting off, like the gym is full of like a lot of completely different body types. Like, and it's I can absolutely
Well,
understand.
is it a college gym?
Okay, so I was gonna say a little, that's a really good point because college gyms do have like every time I go to the college gym, I'm like astounded is that people in college gyms like are in insanely good shape because they're young, they have a lot of time, and that's probably the big like peak gym culture is at that age. But not like obviously not everyone is like in insane shape, and it's definitely intimidating because you think everyone cares about you and is like watching you. And I absolutely recommend like personal trainers are a great remedy for that. If you are having problems like with so like you're just insecure about going to the gym and it like causes you to not want to go, then personal trainers are like by far the easiest way around that. Like I was really lucky to have my dad to guide me because he's in like really good shape for his age and he's also really into going to the gym, and he guided me and like encouraged me to go and was an accountability partner for me for probably the first 6 months until I felt confident enough to go on my own.
Yeah, it really does help. Growing up, I was also afraid of the gym, and so my dad bought like weights, and so we had like this little bench in the backyard with like a little bench press, and so
Yeah.
that was kind of how I started there. And it was like once you put the first plate on when you're doing bench press, now it's like this is like becoming a man in gym culture. It's like you finally broken through, you've broken that barrier. Um, Kind of going back to something you mentioned earlier, you said the kids these days, um, dude, it's so wild because when I was in school, being buff was like it was so special. If you were ripped, everybody knew it, everybody, and it was like it put you on a pedestal, even if you were weird or even if you were like socially awkward. It's like everybody knew. And today it's different because everybody's yoked. Like all it seems like all of the girls are in extremely good shape. Maybe it's because people are eating healthier. Um, Maybe because of social media, where it's like uh, it's easy to see people and easy to get motivated, and maybe it's easy even to feel guilty because you're not in super hyper good shape. And so there's like a tremendous amount of social pressure to get up and actually go to the gym. Um, because in this era that we live in where everybody's beautiful, like it like each day that goes on, it matters less and less being physically beautiful. And or like I guess moving forward, how do we even find like a good partner? Like when you grow up in a world where literally everybody is gorgeous, like how do you stand out, you know? Do you go to the gym even more and work on your butt even more, you know? Or do you transition over into, you know, more internal stuff like meditating or, you know, these types of things? Like kind of how are you dealing with this new kind of world where literally everybody's beautiful? You know, are you kind of trying to just keep up with the rat race, or is this not even crossed your mind?
No, that is a good question. And just to like sidebar there, it's crazy. I was just thinking there's only a 4 year age gap between us. And I was just thinking like in that 4 years, like how much culture can change. Because I was thinking the same thing is that when I was in high school, it was like it wasn't like this. And I was just like, it's just crazy. Like you also mentioned what started this. That's also like a great question. Social media is 100% the reason it's like spread so much. Gym culture's exploded. But I guess all it really takes is for a few key influencers to start something and it spreads because yeah, social media like is such a big deal for teenagers and young adults. Like it influences so many aspects of their life that I have no doubt, like the self-esteem issues caused by it just like encourage people to go to the gym. But to answer your question, because I agree, like people these days, yeah, like they take their health, like they take their body a lot more seriously. Because as I mentioned before, like a lot of the practices like with gym culture, like are not super healthy. Like just like, oh, I don't need sleep. I just need like to eat so much protein and like have 400
Hmm.
milligrams of caffeine in order to go and just like cycle drugs to like build muscle. It's not like it does promote a healthier lifestyle in a sense, but there's a lot of aspects of like that just aren't healthy. I guess like there's always like this could be an answer to your question is that yeah, some people do just try and take it more to the extreme. Like people that are in great shape, they're still not big enough, so they start cycling steroids or, things like that.
So, why do you think everybody's working out? Like, why don't you think everybody's motivating, meditating, for example? You know, like it seems like everybody, and maybe the reason that it's happening in high school is because it's the easiest thing to do, right? Like, I know that that's probably why I kept working out, is because it was the easiest way to improve myself. Because not only do you get benefits from it, but it provides like it makes you feel good right now, right? So you get the dopamine hit right now, which I don't think is very common in a lot of these self improvement things. Like with a book, it takes forever to read a book. It takes forever to see benefits from meditating. It takes forever to start a new habit. It takes forever. It literally can take um, years to like through your diet get rid of like something like acne. Um, like all of these things take years and years, and it seems like maybe working out is just the first. It's the easiest step. It's the most give me step, and so this is why maybe everybody's going there first. And this could be coming off of our list. It's like everything's in a state of becoming. Like the whole world is in a constant state of like self improvement because, and it's not because I mean, there's kind of two ways. There's pushes and pulls, right? So it's like you could ask the question, why did humans start farming? Well, humans didn't start farming because we were like, oh my gosh, look at all the benefits over here. Like humans started farming in mass because one tribe accidentally started farming and they started reaping those benefits and therefore they had more kids, they were more fed, so they had more kids, and simply because they had more kids now they can beat our tribe. So it's actually, if we want to keep up, we have to kind of expand and start farming ourselves through this like artificial food surplus. And um, and maybe this is what's happening in the gym where it's like uh, the whole world is trying to become better, and so we just have a few years ago there were just a few handfuls of people who started exercising, and because of the benefits or the things that they unlocked for their lives, other people start realizing like, holy moly, I can't even keep up unless I'm also kind of on this path. And so maybe they start exercising. And then once you start exercising, you start getting into things like yoga, which a big part of yoga culture is meditating and being one with yourself and kind of removing guilt. And so now through that practice, you're increasing your empathy, you're increasing heart rate variability, you're probably increasing mobility, all these types of things. And so it could just be the world is kind of entering a state of becoming where it's like step one is exercise, maybe step two is like getting your sleep, these types of things, because you have to have a certain amount of um, maybe discipline or mental faculty built up to be able to like afford waking up every single day early. And so it's like, it's essentially like self improvement capital, where it's like you invest your time into exercising, then your exercising starts paying dividends into your self improvement capital, which then you spend on meditating or which you spend on waking up early. Which, if you do it long enough, those investments start to then again pay dividends into your capital. And so now you can um, now you're responsible enough to maybe have children. Maybe this is why not enough people are having kids these days, is because they don't have any capital to spend on kids. They can't afford kids, but not in a monetary sense, in a like get your shit together sense, you know? And maybe it's like, because we grew up, I mean, it would be hard to argue that we grew up in a hard time. We grew up in the most, especially being American, like it's so easy. Everything almost, there's no scarcity in America. Anything you want, you can get it. Um, and because of that, it's like the saying, hard times create hard men. Hard men create great times. Great times create soft men. And maybe what we're seeing is we grew up in an era of soft men. We are. Don't let me include you. I know that I used to be. I'm becoming much better, but I was a soft man, very very soft, very weak. I would let many areas of my life just fall out because I didn't have any standards, and um, I think that if we want to really make the world a better place, or whatever your ultimate life goal is, you got to get your shit together. And maybe this is where some people have gotten their shit together, and now there's everybody else is like, oh my gosh, it's actually quite valuable to have your shit together, And so now we're seeing this initial huge rush to the gyms, where maybe in the next few years we're going to see this huge rush to um, other things. The thing that's a little bit more expensive, but less expensive. Like it's the next least expensive thing. Would be my bet where all the masses go next. So whether that's like meditating or like these new things called the second brain, um, it's just wow. I mean, what do you think about any of this that I've been saying?
Yeah,
You seem like you've been listening, so I feel like I've been kind of
that
hitting
was
on maybe.
insanely insightful. Your analogy of farming creating, farming was a trend that had to be adopted in order to stay competitive. I think that's like a
Yeah.
really good point, is that that's how culture is spread. It's how innovations are spread. And it also was interesting to me is that I do agree, like the one thing you have to give modern generations is how many people were like doing yoga before? Like how many people were doing yoga in the 50s? You
Oh,
know,
zero.
who was going to the gym in the 50s? Like who was doing yoga in the 50s? Who was journaling in the 50s? Like that is a really good point, is that as you
Oh,
and
interesting.
your comment on dividends is like as you get better, you grow in the gym, then you can, focus on yoga and so on. Like we live nowadays like in such a self-help culture, and such like like there's so much emphasis on thoughtfulness and mindfulness in today's culture that I hadn't considered. Like people like Tim, like there's always been entrepreneurs, but like you're like a huge fan of Tim Ferriss. Like I don't think I could ever see Tim Ferriss existing outside of like this century. Maybe like late 90s, but I just can't see it. Like granted, I'm also
Huh.
very young,
That's
so I
actually such a good point. Well, I mean, we're all just a product of the culture that we were from. Like you are literally just a precipitation of the day and time that you come from. It's really that simple, you know? And this is why I think that no, like maybe I've had like one truly original idea, maybe, right? But really, this is why like maybe calculus was invented at the same time by multiple different people on the earth, right? Like because it was just like it was Newton and then Leibniz. They had these. They were just a product of their times, and they realized a need, and they both invented this crazy new invention that laid the whole groundwork for like everything. Most of the modern technology that we have today runs on these really abstract mathematical concepts that were invented all at the same time, hundreds of years ago. Um, but it's interesting. So back to what you said a few moments ago, you said who's journaling in the 50s. So this is actually wild because whenever it was I think it was like in the 1940s, like the mid 40s in Europe, whenever World War II was happening, and I think it was Germany that was bombing like Great Britain, and they just every single day for like months on end they were bombing the city every single day, and so many people say that Winston Churchill was kind of a shitty leader. Well, he was actually rather a phenomenal wartime leader. Like he was super good. I mean, in terms of the perception of what was being done by the British, he really nailed it on that part. And it was like the most difficult time that you could have ever been alive was probably, well, obviously you could have been Jewish in like Poland or something during a few years earlier. Obviously, that would have been worse. But let's say you were like a British citizen, like there was probably never a worse time than in like the 40s whenever these bombings were happening. And what was very interesting was culturally, every single citizen started taking journals. And this comes from a book we read in book club a while back called Splendid and the Vile. And I forget who it's by. It was a very interesting book. It's like the biggest book you ever read, and it takes a span over like a year or something. So it's there's so much packed into such a short amount of time. And most of the information from that book comes from the journals of the citizens. So, like hundreds of thousands of people in Britain would journal their thoughts, their daily activities, their who they love, what conversation they just had. I mean, they wrote down everything because there was like this cultural vibe where it's like we could die today. Like the liquor store that I just invested $100,000 into, or you know what have you, just was bombed today, right? And so you had people's financially getting wiped out, people getting, you know, killed in their beds, right? Bombs coming through their roofs. So it was like arguably like one of the hardest times ever. And this is probably why we see such great times now, is because through those hardships, it really created hard men who just created such a great world. And maybe one of the reasons that those hard men were created was because they were doing things like building good habits. They might not have known they were building good habits, but journaling every single day because you thought you might die today, you know, uh, maybe it's just, maybe the reason that everybody's self-helping now is because, I don't know, people like Tim Ferriss are just making it so damn easy, you know? And even Tim Ferriss and Tony Robbins, like all of these people, even look at Tony Robbins, you know, he probably couldn't have existed before like the 80s and 90s. Um, and then go before them, you had like somebody like Zig Ziglar. Like, so Zig Ziglar, if you've not experienced this man, he is just a trip. So Zig Ziglar was this salesman, and he wrote these motivational books. One of them is called Goals. And if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. For me, it really motivated me to start setting and achieving goals. Um, his voice is just eloquent. His examples are just terrific. You can really tell he's just a pro. And so, but Zig didn't. He was not about any of the life hacks or any of that stuff, because that stuff came later. Like first and foremost, it was like the goals maybe, and then on top of that, they built. You know, Tony Robbins' big thing is all about, you know, your state, so your physiological state, your attitude, like the story that you're telling yourself, and then the strategy, like how you're going to move into, how you're going to complete your task and move into tomorrow, using your physiology and your attitude to kind of push yourself forward. And then now we have people like Tim Ferriss who are kind of accepting the fact that many people have done all of the hard work. And so now what he does, oh my gosh, what he does is he actually probes other high performers, because it's easy to become a high performer, or not easy, it's relatively straightforward to become a high performer. And so now it's like the tactics, how to become a high performer. This is set in stone. We know how to do this. It's very easy. You do the things, you follow the plan, you will become a high performer. And so now this has created a gap where it's like, do I go to the wedding or do I go to the conference, right? So there are many profiles in Tribe of Mentors that address this exact thing, like how to make a decision between two appearingly phenomenal options, right? So it's like once you've built up all this capital, now you've got all these options. Okay, well, how do we say no? See, how do we say no to these extra things that we could do? How do we choose between these things? And this is interesting. So I don't mean to be just rapping this whole time. I mean, um, these thoughts have it's all starting to make sense, I guess, is what I'm coming to. It's very interesting.
You yeah, you made a really strong point that just made me reconsider that argument that I made before about I couldn't see people like Tim Ferriss existing in previous generations, but it really could just be the technology of today. Like the fact that they have a platform to inspire so many people and social media's effects. And I was saying like, oh, nowadays, like, there's so many people that are really big on just mindfulness, working on their bodies themselves, journaling. And I got a note, I said, who's journaling in the 50s? Probably a lot of people because they didn't have like easy access technology. What I meant by that is like gratitude journaling, not just like a Dear Diary situation. But
Yeah.
yeah, it very well could just be like it most likely is just the platform because there's always been high achievers like Tim Ferriss. Like literally, you're talking about Isaac Newton just invented calculus or co-invented calculus as a tool, just as a tool so we could, you know, create Newtonian physics. There's always been insanely intelligent, driven people. And so it most likely is just Tim Ferriss is taking all the hard work's been done and he's just making it easily bite-sized and easily consumable for the people through like the technology that we have today. I never considered that before, but that's probably what's happening. We just live in
And
an
it's like,
age.
and this is we live in an age, man. And it's interesting because like, and so this is why I'm so damn bullish on the future. Like we're gonna solve climate change. We're gonna solve the era of weak men that we have. We're gonna solve that. All these things are gonna be solved. And I think one of the kind of the proofs in the pudding, like, well, so it's this interesting idea where, so you work in software, right? And so there's this idea of every time you just finished a feature, and so it's like by doing the feature, it kind of created another problem. Or like by doing work, we now have more, but now we know that there's more to get, you know? And so it's like every problem that you solve is kind of like chopping the head off of the Hydra, and now two more grow in its place. So it's like the problems that Zig Ziglar solved. So now Tony Robbins, he's got even more problems to solve. And all the problems that Tony solved, now Tim's got to come in and make it all bite sized. And so it's like the act of solving one problem creates like 15 more to solve, which essentially is like 15 more avenues for entrepreneurs to come in and to make a space, or for people to come in and create some tool that solves a problem. And it's this idea where the universe is always going to increase operations per second. So whether this is a star growing in size, to physically do more nuclear fusions per second, or whether this is, this same behavior is within us, where it's really effective to become more efficient, right? More operations per second. Using a calculator wasn't fast enough, so now you use a spreadsheet where you can have multiple calculations happen at the same time, right? Taking It's the same amount of space, but you squeeze more energy, you squeeze more operations per unit of time into the tool. And now we have this thing that I'm using called Notion. It is it is badass, man. It is so cool.
I'm
Like,
so glad you brought that up because I was literally gonna ask you about that and ask you to sell me on that.
dude, it's it's fucking cool, man. It is so cool. Basically, what I'm working with here is I've got a dashboard. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and share my screen, and we can just kind of play with this for a little bit. This thing is cool. So basically, what I'm trying to work on here is the goal is to create a one-stop shop for all of my situations. So my first iteration was to create a personal and a professional dashboard, and then I realized it was actually quite valuable to separate out client work from this. And so if you go over here, you can see my task list, my journals and notes. And remember, I talked about yesterday doing a scientific method or whatever to solve these problems. I came in here, and by doing the scientific method, okay, here's my specific issue. solve the issue. Here's my specific issue, setting a very specific goal. Here's the proof of the solved goal. Here's the new goal. Here's the proof of that working. So working in a very like skipping no steps, piece by piece. I've never gotten more done in a day than I did yesterday, and this wasn't even all day. So this was like iteration 2. And then last night, what I stayed up all night doing was working on this kind of this new system where it's like quick capture. You've got your task inbox. Every new task that you've got comes in here, and you create a new task. And I'm still kind of working on how this is going to be organized. But my gut is telling me that this is going to work. So I've got my dashboard. It's got my quick links. So everybody's always like, oh, what's the link to this? So I've got delivery excellence courses right here. As this grows, it'll become even more useful. I've got my day. So here I've got these things, and these aren't connected to any database or anything. These are just tasks that I would like to do each day. So task and events, every single day I should be meditating for 20 minutes. So then I would click this and then drink 2 bottles of water. I've got my self-care routine here, and then you can kind of hide this. I go over here to my day. So my day looks like this. So if you chase 2 rabbits, you will catch neither one. I really like this Russian proverb. It just makes so much sense to me. And so I'm kind of getting like an upcoming task kind of month here. So here's a task here. I really would like to change the thumbnail on my last podcast video. So I'm going to make that change here. I've got my daily journal and my priority projects. And then so you can come over here, quick capture. This is where it's the one-stop shop. If I have a thought, it comes in here. If I have like, oh, I need to do this, it comes here over in the tasks. Then you've got your task manager. So you've got your task inbox. Then you've got your time-based views. Today, what am I doing tomorrow? The next 7 days, the next month. We've got this month over here. And so then we've got our project hub. This one is currently empty. And what I'd like to do is have a podcast page set up over here. So I come in here and I can see, like, for example, I'll have like a new database maybe, and this will be, so what I might do is come over here and I would do like call out. And in here I could type like maybe goals. And so I like to kind of highlight this and do like a heading on this. We can do it like this. We'll do like a heading, and I'll come over here and I'll put like a trophy or something. So we've got our goals over here. And what I can do is I can come in here and I can add like let's do like a database. Or rather, what we can do, since I already have all my goals, I can create a view and I can actually reference goals. And if I had, okay, so it looks like I don't have any goals yet. So this page is probably empty. It is. So we can go over here and create a new database. And this is goals. And now we come over here to Project Hub, and I can actually reference these goals from this view. So essentially, I've not done a great job at selling this because the usability for this, for me, or the productivity gain, it's all incipient, or it's all still in the works. What I do know is that having a one-stop shop for my podcast where I can have, these are my goals, here's the upcoming stuff, here, and then I click on, let's say you have a little thing, like, so in here, in goals, there could be like a people tab. And in the people, you pull up people notes or whatever. So I've got my loved ones. Let's come in here and let's just say for arguments, we've got Kade, right? So Kade's a loved one. I can go ahead and open up his like file, and in here I can have notes. I can have conversations we've had. I can reference the last time we spoke. I can write down your goals, your aspirations. So when I'm doing my coaching, I can come in here and I can see everything related to just you. And so this is critical because it allows me to forget about all the other nonsense going on in my life, and I can focus only on you. And this is important for me because this helps me be an active listener, which is one of the things I'm trying to work on these days is how to make the person in front of me first and foremost, and how to kind of listen. It's the easiest thing to do if you want to learn something new. If you want to learn something new, listen. So currently, it's all very incipient and it's very messy. right? Think about the saying, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. And so here, what we've got is we've got a very long letter. Um, and so, yeah, so you can purchase different things on here. Like you can purchase, for example, this exact template that I'm using is called the Ultimate Second Brain, and you can purchase it for $100. But I was like, I wonder if I could just build it, because I do need to, I feel like I need to learn this tool. And so essentially that's what I did all last night. And I thought about this deeply. I was like, should I just pay the $100 and buy this? Or should I buy this with my time, metaphorically, by creating it myself? And so I kind of dug the creating, um, and so yeah, so it's super cool, and I'm already sold on it. It's just one of those things where it's like, how much how much does your organization system cost, right? If it doesn't cost more than $100, then, or at least for, I can't talk about you. For me, what I've noticed is the more that I spend on organization, the more that I spend on software that like I use for my productivity, the more that I spend on my calendars, my journals. I got my 10-year journal somewhere. The more that I invest in these things, the more they actually pay dividends. And so I'm not. I don't know quite yet what this is going to look like, um, because it's very frenetic, it's very busy, everything is kind of all over the place. The room's very messy. But I really do feel like if I can figure out specifically the task management, then task management and journaling in one place for all of my different things, where everything can be easily filtered, and all I want to see is exactly just what I want to see. Um, this has already been paying dividends. And in the future, tools like this, somebody's going to combine this with AI and forget about it. Now we're going to have like little 4-year-olds. Like in the future, there are going to be children who run their life based on this type of software. And those types of children are going to be like the weird kid in high school who works out all the time. And now he's like super buff and healthy, and he's like starting his own like business or whatever, some like health and fitness business. Like there's going to be children who use software like this, and it's just going to happen earlier and earlier. Um, and because it's just so damn efficient, people who use this, you can't even compete with them, because to them, if you from the outside looking in, it's like, oh my God, how are you doing this? You're so busy all the time. Like, how could you complete all these tasks? But from them, it's like, honestly, I'm not busy at all. Like, I don't stress about anything. The software does literally everything for me. So Notion is a free app. It's completely free, like completely free. And the way they make money, I think, is other people, they add like plugins to it and you pay them, and I think maybe Notion gets a cut of that, so that's how they make money. And
Is it
also
just for
this
iOS?
iOS, Android, Mac, Linux. I mean, it's on everything. And you can also set this up and have like teams doing this. So, like, let's say you get your own dashboard set up, we can actually sync between specific pages in our thing. And so we can actually run, like, maybe one of our pages is like the retreat app. We could actually have this in here and run tasking and journaling and, um, the PO and milestones and goals. We could have like different areas, resources. We could have a library of like information in here in a very searchable way that makes onboarding just a breeze. So obviously, I'm already investing tremendously in this software. Um, but the metaphor being, currently where I am is I'm like Tarzan swinging through the forest, where I currently have a vine, and this vine is paper notes, right? I've got literally dozens of individual pieces of paper with dates on them, with topics, with like just whatever pictures, um, and also I'm maintaining this. So my current workload is actually exponentially increased. And so either it's going to work or it doesn't. Either I'm going to be able to grab the next vine and completely let go of this vine, or I will fall, because you can't hold both, right? It's too much work. And so I really think that this is going to work. And if it doesn't, then I'll crash and burn. But I really feel confident that this tool is, it's going to let me do what I want to do. Because the thing about Notion is it lets you build the thing that you need. So it's totally, I mean, it's customizable down to the like almost to the bit level. Like you can customize everything. Um, Basically, the way that it works is you have data stores. So there's no spreadsheets, it's all databases. And it's not a MySQL database, it's like a document database, which I don't know if you've experienced yet, but these are super easy to use. So everything works on a database. So the fundamental data you can control, but then you can also control the views. So how do I filter data? How do I sort this data? I can decide not to see this. I can decide to only see this on Thursdays after I've just gotten the text. It's so easily interoperable with other software that you already use, and it's just phenomenal. So I don't know why this is free. I mean, I literally can't believe this is free, but it is. And I've had it. I've had this software for about 24 hours now, and in the last 24 hours, I think I've spent 6 hours on it, just because it's so freaking usable. It's so easy to use. I mean, it doesn't. There's something about having an extremely high quality tool in your hand where you use your tool and it's almost like the tool goes away. It doesn't get in the way of your creative process. It doesn't get in the way of your productive process
It's
because
an
the tool is so,
extension of you.
it's an extension. It's so damn high quality that it just disappears. And that is what I'm looking for in a tool, is something that completely disappears from my thoughts, where I can just kind of immerse myself into the thing. If you will subscribe to the idea of flow, it lets you enter that state kind of a little bit easier, because you're never wondering, oh, how do I do CRUD? I can't. Oh, now I'm running into a CORS error, or I'm getting a 500 error. I mean, it literally is like building a website with drag and drop things where the styles are awesome and there's emojis galore, which I'm a big fan of, obviously. Um, Anyway, I mean, at a certain point, you got to shut me up because I can talk about this all day. The software is phenomenal. I love it. And
It looks good. We're not sponsored, by the way, though. Not
not
that's
sponsored at all. Oh, and thank you very much. So we did have a time to jump off here, and I just wanted to remember, because this is kind of a podcast. If you liked at any time during this episode, if you've liked what you heard, or you think that there's potential, go ahead and hit a like button. Go ahead and hit a subscribe button, because subscribing and liking to the channel is very important for the growth, and it just shows me that you actually do get some value out of this. Um, and I guess, Kate, it was so fun having you on.
yeah.
Next time, one of my goals is to have more targeted questions to get you talking more about these types of things. Maybe you get your own Notion, and you can show us what's been going on there. That said, if you have any closing remarks, if you have anything that you want to plug, anywhere that where can the people find you? Any last closing remarks at all? This would be a great time to do it.
So yeah, I don't really, I don't have a huge social media presence. Like that's why I don't really take a lot of like mirror selfies and anything. But I do have. I'm gonna flip the script on you for a second here, Conrad, because I've always wondered this. I've always wondered this, and I'm sure a lot of the people are too. Is what event in your life? What was the stimulus for your obsession with self-growth? If that makes sense. There's no way you have had this mindset and have been like this your entire life. I'm curious if there was a defining moment in your life that started this, because you're definitely crazy, Conrad. But I think it's in a good way.
So the answer to this question, the real answer is very dark, and it's very, very deep. We can go into it real quick. We can talk about, yeah. So let's just go into it, I guess. Basically, when I was a child, when I was 5 years old, or I think it was when I was 3. I don't remember that early. I remember maybe 4 and 5. So my mom got cancer, and she actually passed away. She died when I was about 5 years old, and I was literally witness to this event. Like I was in the room when it happened, and it was horribly tragic. And I even remember the idea of death was so prevalent in my family that I remember one day I was watching TV. This was the night that she passed. I was sitting in the living room and I was watching TV, and I'll never forget. It was I was watching like Rudolph, or it was like there was a snowman and he was kind of walking along singing a song, and then it cut to a J.C. Penney commercial. Mackenzie comes in and she says, "Oh, Jack, mom's dying." And I laugh at her. I'm like, "Mackenzie, I've heard this a million times. Whatever, I've got TV to watch." And she literally says, she was like, "Okay, well, if you don't come now, you're gonna miss it." And she like in that kind of tone, and she runs into the back. And so like reluctantly I stand up and I go back there, and it's real dreary, and obviously it's extremely sad. Um, and so after that moment, we were all holding hands, and it was an incredibly intimate moment. Um, and so that happening at such a young age, it really helped me understand that life is very uh, fickle. Like, um, you never know when your last day is going to be. And so this kind of mentality that I had at such a young age, um, in some ways it was tragic, and in other ways it was very beneficial, because I can see kind of what life really is, and where it comes from, and um, essentially it's probably just one of these metaphors where a hard time creates a hard man, which then creates kind of good time. Maybe it's something like that. Um, but I would say that my mom's death was incredibly shocking. Um, and it really just taught me that time is ticking. I mean, like literally the clock is ticking right now. And so, yeah, it's good to sometimes watch TV, and it's good to, play your video games, and to, hang out with buddies, and go on walks and all these things. And I guess at the end of the day, it's just about what type of life do you want to live, and how do you want to, who do you want to spend time with, and what do you want to work on, because you will die, um, first and foremost. So I always say that uh, that experience probably defined my entire life. Um, and that's the truth of the situation.
I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for sharing that with me, though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of
I guess
course.
I always figured it would kind of have been something like as a teen. That's crazy thinking that someone you can grow and have revelations like that at such a young age. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Conrad, for sharing that with me.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and this was like, I remember I was about 8 when I realized, in my opinion, that religion was just made up. Um, and so it was like all of these things where it was that first experience that kind of opened my eyes to like, huh. Because then you go to school and people would say things, and it's like, wait, but that's not really. And so it's kind of, maybe it's this thing where there's this interesting thing where you experience something, and then you kind of go back to your normal life, and and then everything is different. It's like the curse of knowledge, where it's like you take a bite of the apple, and you can never unbite that apple. Um, and so the first girlfriend I ever got, I used to pray to get a girlfriend, but then when I finally got a girlfriend, I realized, oh, and obviously it's probably very vain or self-centered or whatever to think this, but it was in that moment that I realized that religion was made up. It was something that people do, in my opinion, it was something that people do to get essentially a framework for how to live your life for free. It was, you get a personal value system, you get hobbies for free, you get things to spend your money on, you get a community for free. So you get essentially friends, family, a social connectivity network, all for free. And so this is what religion is. And I realized that when I was praying, I used to pray for a girlfriend, but it wasn't God that got me a girlfriend. It was me changing my behavior and being more honest and genuine that made that change, in my opinion, obviously. Um, And that was harder. It was easier to pray than to actually look myself in the mirror and make those changes. Um, and so it's just, I guess it's just you take a bite of the apple and you can never unbite it. So be very careful of which apples you bite, because some of them are very spicy. Um, they're very, very spicy. Uh, but I think at the end of the day, you've got one life to live, so maybe it's worth it at the end, you know. Um,
It's
so
worth buying some spicy apples.
it's worth biting some spicy apples, yeah, for sure. So I think this is a fine place to stop. We're gonna go ahead and cut it off here. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.
See you guys.